Amidst the notoriety of Hitler's atrocities, another dark chapter remains shrouded in silence: the unspeakable cruelty of King Leopold. While the world is familiar with Hitler, Leopold's horrors go unnoticed. In this video, we will uncover a forgotten era of ruthless colonialism in Africa, where powers raced for dominance. The Berlin Conference granted King Leopold II of Belgium control over the Congo Basin, leading to a dark era from 1885 to 1908. Approximately 10 million Congolese lives were lost, with half the victims falling prey to brutal killings and forced labor. But before we go any further, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. The labor policy of the Free State, known as the Red Rubber System, focused on maximizing rubber extraction, which served as the primary source of revenue for the state. The increasing popularity of bicycles in Europe led to a significant rise in demand for rubber, consequently prompting the establishment of the Dunlop Rubber Company in 1890. However, this expansion unknowingly led to the exploitation of the Congolese people, as forced labor was imposed as a form of taxation, effectively transforming the society into one resembling a slave society. Private companies had significant autonomy in the concessionary territories to employ any means to boost production and profits without state intervention. The lack of oversight and regulations facilitated abuses, and officials on the ground had discretion over the treatment and duration of service for laborers. Thus, a cruel system was birthed, known as Leopold's Rubber Terror, designed to instill obedience through wholesale barbarity. ABIR and the Anversois companies were particularly notorious for their harsh treatment of Congolese workers, with some regions described as veritable hells on earth by historians. Compensation for laborers often consisted of meager items like cloth, beads, salt, or knives, and in some cases, even slaves were given as rewards to chiefs who enforced rubber collection. Under the iron rule of the King of Belgium, an army and police force known as the Force Publique emerged as instruments of oppression. Comprised of Belgian officers and African troops, this private army enforced the brutal dictates of the slave plantations scattered across the colony. The colonial overlords devised a sinister scheme, demanding each village to produce a specific quota of rubber, relinquished freely to their grip. Failure to meet these imposed expectations would invite unspeakable punishments upon the villagers. When villagers dared to defy their oppressors, their very limbs paid the price, hands and feet severed, a grotesque method employed to conserve precious ammunition. These amputations became a chilling symbol of the Congolese people's anguish, as their lives transformed into a haunting nightmare. They also imposed forced labor for the extraction of rubber, palm oil, and ivory, punitive measures such as beatings and lashings. But the atrocities did not end there. The imperialists pushed the boundaries of cruelty even further. Officers of the dreaded Force Publique resorted to hostage-taking, holding innocent Congolese families for ransom to extract maximum labor from their kin. Failure to meet rubber quotas brought death upon their loved ones. One chilling account recalls an officer decapitating 100 villagers, deeming it a necessary act to ensure food supplies for the army, as though the lives sacrificed paved the way for the survival of many. Meanwhile, the Force Publique had a disturbing requirement of presenting the severed hands of their victims as proof whenever they had shot and killed someone. This measure was believed to prevent the soldiers from using the imported munitions, which came at great expense from Europe, for personal hunting or for potential rebellions. A junior officer recounted a horrifying incident where a village that had expressed dissent was targeted for punishment. The commanding officer issued orders for the decapitation of the men, with their heads to be displayed on the village palisades, and for the hanging of the women and children on the palisade in the form of a cross. Witnessing the killing of a Congolese individual for the first time, a Danish missionary was met with a soldier's remark, "Do not take this to heart too much. If we fail to bring the rubber, they will kill us. The commissioner has promised that our service will be shortened if we provide an abundance of hands." As described by Forbath, the baskets brimming with severed hands, presented to the European post commanders, became a chilling symbol of the Congo Free State. The act of collecting hands took on a perverse significance of its own. The Force Publique soldiers would offer these hands in place of rubber, and sometimes even prioritize harvesting hands over rubber itself. They transformed into a grim form of currency, compensating for deficits in rubber quotas and substituting for the people who were demanded by forced labor gangs. The soldiers of the Force Publique received bonuses based on the number of hands they collected. In theory, the severing of each right hand was meant to indicate a killing. However, in practice, soldiers would sometimes cheat by simply cutting off the hand and leaving the victim to live or die in order to conserve ammunition. Numerous survivors later recounted how they managed to survive massacres by feigning death, remaining motionless even as their hands were severed. and waiting until the soldiers departed before seeking assistance. This led to instances where a soldier could reduce their service term by presenting a large number of hands compared to their peers, resulting in widespread mutilations and dismemberment. According to historian David Van Raybroek, the photographs depicting mutilated individuals have contributed to a misconception that dismemberment of the living was a common practice. Van Raybroek argued that while instances of dismemberment of the living did occur, it was not as systematic as often portrayed. Jean Stengers and Daniel van Groenweg also affirmed that there was no systemic practice of dismembering living individuals as a punishment for failing to meet rubber production quotas. They stated that the most cases of dismemberment of the living were the result of soldiers mistakenly cutting off the hands of people they had shot, believing them to be deceased when they were still alive. Repeatedly, Leopold II expressed disapproval of dismemberment due to his detrimental effect on his economic interests. He was quoted as saying, "Cutting off hands, that's nonsensical. I would cut off everything else, but not hands. That's the one thing I require in the Congo." In a deeply unsettling account, a Catholic priest recounts the words of a man named Tswambe, who spoke about the despised state official Leon Fievez, overseeing a district located 500 kilometers north of Stanley Pool along the river. All the indigenous people regarded this man as the devil of the equator. After each killing, the soldier had to sever the hands. He demanded that each soldier bring back baskets filled with the severed hands. Any village that refused to provide rubber would face complete annihilation. In my youth, I witnessed Molili, one of Fievez's soldiers, who was stationed in the village of Boyeka, take a net and trap 10 captive natives within it. He then attached heavy stones to the net and tossed them into the river. It is a rubber that inflicts these agonies, hence we refuse to even utter its name. Soldiers forced young men to commit unspeakable acts, including the killing in violation of their own mothers and sisters. In addition to the rubber collection operations, violence within the Congo Free State primarily occurred in relation to wars and rebellions. Native states such as Masiri's Yeka Kingdom, the Zande Federation, and Swahili-speaking territories in the eastern Congo, led by figures like Tipu Tip, resisted colonial authority and were eventually defeated by the Force Publique through ruthless means during the Congo Arab War. In 1895, a military mutiny erupted among the Batetela in Kasai, sparking a 4-year insurgency. The conflict was marked by extreme brutality and resulted in a significant number of casualties. In addition to the labor imposed on indigenous Congolese people, the Congo Free State also utilized the labor of non-Congolese individuals. The Free State brought in 540 Chinese laborers specifically for railway construction projects in the Congo. However, it is important to note that out of the total number, 300 Chinese laborers either died or abandoned their posts. Similarly, individuals from the Caribbean and other African countries were also recruited to work on the railways. Tragically, during the initial 2 years of construction, approximately 3,600 of these imported workers lost their lives due to railway accidents, lack of proper shelter, physical punishments such as flogging, hunger, and disease. Leopold approved the establishment of child colonies where orphan Congolese children were forcibly taken and enrolled in schools run by Catholic missionaries. These schools served as the sole educational institutions funded by the state. However, these child colonies were marked by immense suffering. Over 50% of the children sent to these schools perished due to diseases, and many more lost their lives during the forced marches to the colonies. In a tragic example, 108 boys were sent on a march to a mission school, but only 62 survived. Shockingly, even after their arrival, 8 of these survivors succumbed to illness within a week. The presence of rubber companies like ABIR exacerbated the impact of natural disasters such as famine and disease. ABIR's tax collection system compelled men to leave their villages and engage in rubber collection, leaving no labor force available for clearing new fields and planting crops. Consequently, women were forced to cultivate depleted fields, resulting in reduced yields. This problem was further compounded by company sentries who would pilfer crops and livestock from the local communities. In 1899, the post at Banginda experienced a famine, and in 1900, missionaries documented a severe famine across ABIR's concession area. With that said, thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more. See you in the next video. Till then, take care.